Okay, came to my attention that some people don't understand what endpoint adjustment is. Uh, One of my friends, a YouTube friend that I've done a lot of work, well not a lot, but I rebuilt his motor, his DVXL motor, because it wouldn't work, it wouldn't run. And I've walked him through a couple of other things. His most recent one was his steering. He didn't have much steering. It would only go like not even that much. And he doesn't, right here it says, to make the most of your driving experience, refer to the manual for EPA endpoint adjustment settings prior to use, before you use. Okay. Endpoint adjustment is also known as servo travel. On, say, a fly sky, it is actually referred to as endpoint. On spectrum, it is referred to as travel. So for this one, travel, let's turn, well, first I gotta turn over to, sorry, I usually have lights on this. My cage has lights, so I'm going to change my model. Had my Baja out earlier. Okay. If you want that kind of steering, you're going to want to get a Killer RC makes a bigger battery box, but I didn't do that. I just got a Turniggy Nanotech 2200 milliamp hour 2S battery. It fits in here, and I'll leave a link in the description. And I let the balance connector hang out like that. So I'll show you why I do that. But a lot of people have problems with the servos with this. I honestly think it's because they're not getting enough voltage. That's a lot of the times I see that people are just running the stock nickel metal hydride 1800 milliamp hour battery, and it quickly loses voltage. Now the reason I always have a low voltage meter on my keychain. So I always have one with me, because usually if I have an RC, I have my keys. So with this, I can check my voltage in my 2S battery. It uses the balance plug. So right now everything is at 7.7 volts. It needs to be charged. Well, not really, 3.9 volts at each, and they can go down to about 3.2 volts. But that's why I leave that out just a little bit. That's actually a little too far. But now, as we get to endpoint, that will do sort of the same thing as the, it will do the same thing as what's known as dual rates. Let's see if this has that on here. I usually don't mess with that kind of stuff myself. Reverse, travel, exponential, bind, sub-trim, timer, switching, mixing, servo speed, trim step. No. Okay, steering rate. That's what let's see, I gotta find the right switch for it. There's so many switches on this. Okay, steering rate. This knob, and on the DX2E, it's the same knob. It's just not digital like this one. So if I turn this way down to say 50%, I'm only going to get that much steering. But then when I turn it back up, Let's go to 75%. I get even more. And then with it all the way up, I get that much. Now with dual rate, not dual rate, endpoints, that's also known as travel. So, wait, let me go back. Turn everything down. Okay. I had to turn down the AVC. Okay, so now I'm going to go to travel. The same thing can be done. So let's go to left. You'll actually watch right now as it starts to go right. As I turn it down from 125%. Now I have it. I'm going to turn it down to 50%, left and right. So now when I steer, I only have that much. Endpoint adjustment is how much throw the servo arm will have. Right now I just have the stock plastic one on here with the metal steering link, but I do have a metal one, I just haven't put it on yet. So let's put these back where they're supposed to be. Back up to 100, and you'll see slowly as I turn it back up to 100, more. I honestly don't like to hold throttle unless I'm moving, because that's what can kill a servo. And you can just see that now I have 100% steering back. Turn that back up. And actually with mine, for some reason, in order for me to turn left, I have fully to lock. I have to go to 125%. So now I have full, almost lock-to-lock steering. I get more to the left than I do to the right, not a big deal. And same thing can be done with the brakes. And the throttle and the brakes. It sets how far it can go before it stops. Now, with the brakes, I'm not going to change mine because I love the way my braking setup is right now. But right here you have your two brake levers. You have a brake for the front and a brake for the back with a center diff. I have 1 million weight grease in it, so it's honestly just the front brake would work, but with this you can actually set the rear brake to have a little more than the front brake. Or traditionally you want the front brake to have more, you want there to be like 60% in the front and 40% in the back. Or maybe if you like sliding around, 60% in the rear, 40% in the back. So with these little collets right here with the screws, you can loosen this and you can move these. And that will set preload on the brakes. So when you go to give it brakes, you can see that I have mine set up so I can slide. When I come to a brake, my rear end will come around because you see that my rear brake starts to be engaged before my front does. Quite a bit. If you watch this right here, you actually see it getting crushed. That's a rubber, basically fuel line. And then when you just give it, that's giving it gas. But when I get on the brake, but you can set the endpoints right here. Not so much, endpoints are usually done digitally, but this will set the endpoint on, okay, how much brake is being applied to the front or the rear, because with these you have a front brake pad assembly and a rear brake pad assembly, because you do have a center differential. If you have a truggy or a buggy that has a center differential, you're going to have the same thing. If you have brakes at this right here with an electric motor, sometimes you'll get rid of these. A lot of people do, but a lot of people also keep them, because if you get on the brake here and you don't have any actual braking on the shafts themselves, if all the weight goes to the front, you can actually have, just say these are locked up. I can't really simulate it inside, but the center diff will still allow like the rear to continue spinning like that. Even though it's sitting still, the rear is spinning. Like I said, I have 1 million weight in mine, and so does some guy over 40. He has a setup very similar to mine, but I have a lot of aluminum on mine. I've done basically a review, and I also have a tuned pipe, but I'm looking at getting a booster pipe from I can't remember exactly the name. Can't even remember the guy's name, but he's in the DBXL group. But that's basically what endpoints is. I'll show it on a Traxxas Jato, my Traxxas Jato. So I'll move this out of the way. But to truly get the most out of your servos, these servos are digital and they can run at they can take the 2S LiPo. I've been running this over almost a year now. May about 10th is when I got this of 2016. I've been running a 2S since then, and I've had no problem with my servos. Now with the Jato, substantially smaller, but with it I'm using a FlySky GT3C. FlySkys are great. I'm actually looking at getting the IT4S. Has a touch screen and a model memory that's better, and it just has more. But on here you can actually see up top here, endpoint. Endpoint is travel. So we turn this on, select the correct model, Jato, turn everything on, and now you can see right now I have a lot. We also have dual rates on here. Right now it's 100%, but on channel 1. Channel 1 is your steering. Channel 2 is your throttle. Always remember, 1 to turn, 2 to burn. So if I'm turning left and I turn this down, see, I don't have nearly the steering that I did. And that's sort of the same as endpoints. I'll go over to endpoints real quick. You can actually see that wheel's turning a little bit more. I can turn it down to 0%. So when I go to turn left, I have no left steering. Turn it back up. And same thing with the right side. I can turn it down to 0. I have left steering, but no right steering. So, turn it back up. When they're not moving around, I really don't like to put weight on the wheels. But it controls how far they can turn or not turn. Like now, it's actually turning a little too far. So I need to turn that down to about 95%, check it. You don't want to hear the servo straining in any way, because that's how you will burn out a servo. You just want it to get to its endpoint, which is how far it will turn, and then hit lock. That's still a little bit too much. I had them 75%, so See, so now, let's go back up a little. At 80, I get full lock and no whine from the servo. Now let's go right. You can actually see that it's hitting the servo, is making a little bit of a whining noise, so I'm going to want to turn that down a little. And now my endpoints are set on my steering. You can do the same thing with your throttle and brake. Right now everything on mine is set. You can also set your endpoints on the brake and the throttle with these little collets. This one has the set screw. This one is a knob, so you can turn it, you can adjust it on the fly without having to have a tool. So you can add brake or subtract brake depending on what you're doing. And there's a spring right here, so the spring will, when you get on the brake, there's sort of a softening effect, so it's not a direct hard linkage. Even with the DBXL, there's not a direct hard linkage. You have those little, you have this little black cone right here, and then you have this fuel line. So when you get on it, it's not metal to metal, it's metal and rubber. So the rubber will get crushed, so it's not a hard connection. So it gives it a little bit of, it's not rigid, it's a soft connection. So yeah, I'm not going to keep repeating myself. I repeated myself like 3 times there. So that's endpoint on a 5th scale and a 10th scale Jato. Endpoint is just how far the servo will spin, throw the servo arm or whatever before it stops. It's also known as travel, like we went over with the Spectrum. This is the DX4S. They also have the DX4R, the DX3S, the DX3R, the DX4C, the DX6R, which is $500, but I would love to have one. So, whoops. And also, in another video, we'll go over Failsafe. Basically with this, if somehow it loses connection, it will, right now it's actually set to give it 100% throttle, but you can change that on the receiver with the FlySky and with Spectrum. But with 5th scales, if you lose contact or something happens, say your servo arm falls off or it gets stuck in full throttle, if you, with a what's known as a kill switch, if you shut off your transmitter or you have a button you can push, it'll kill the engine. It's wired into the engine stop button. Killer RC makes one, Dynamite makes one through Horizon Hobby. There's many, but everybody prefers the Killer RC one. So that's what endpoint is in dual rates. Dual rate is nothing but being able to control how far the wheels turn without having to go into travel or what's known as endpoints. So I'm going to stop right there, and hopefully that helps some people. Peace.